So now we are opening the floor to questions to all speakers again. I saw that Antonio was already answering his question about the guidelines in the chat box, but maybe Antonio, you would also elaborate on that a little bit speaking?
Yeah. The question is about to publish geospatial data in GeoDCAT-AP IT. The geospatial data is not required to publish it in GeoDCAT-AP, since the metadata for spatial data has to be published according to the national metadata profile that is based on Inspire profile, and then through GeoDCAT-AP IT in Italy, as I explained with the slides, the metadata for spatial data will be available in the Open Data Portal. We published the guidelines providing the mapping for the additional elements taking into account the extensions in the metadata profile. Published that guidelines in our portal geodati.gov.it. But the guidelines are not to publish geodata or metadata for spatial data, but to map, to provide the encoding to transform metadata for spatial data into properties defined in DCAT-AP.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I would like to also give the word back a little bit to Andrea and Danny, and you both had some questions that you would also like to ask to the audience. Actually, the questions from Andrea we added to the participants survey, who is actually using GeoDCAT-AP, and then the question following that would be, if you are not using GeoDCAT-AP, why is that? Because you were not aware of it, or because you found it lacking? And if so, what would be the improvements you would suggest you would need? Andrea, would you like to elaborate on that question, or should we just ask the audience? There is another question in the chat box whether the presenters' slide decks are available for download. Yes, we will publish. We will send out the information about where to find the slide decks, and also where to find the recording of the webinar afterwards. So I can't give you the location right now, but we will publish this and send you an email. There is another question, meanwhile, does the ISA² program work on any RDF-based security standard for querying data that, for example, on enterprises and persons in relation to GDPR? So there, the short and simple answer is no, not currently. We have done a small study on how our specifications are related to GDPR that you can find on JoinUp, but not currently any specific work on developing a specification. Maybe the person, Valentina, who posted this question, would you like to elaborate a little bit? You can unmute yourself if you would prefer to speak. Do you see a need for that kind of specification? Would you be interested in participating to develop it? Would you be interested to use it?
Hello, Valentina Janev from Institute Mihailo Pupin, Serbia. No, I was just wondering because we have worked on linked data and we worked on developing tools based on linked data technologies, and from the very beginning in 2011 in LOD2 project. So I had the opportunity to present my work in shared PCI framework and network. So I was just wondering, because with the GDPR everything is changing, with the GDPR concept everything is changing. So we are talking about interlinking the portals, but it is just in the domain of open data and just of the domain without connection with contact data about the persons involved or any essential information about the enterprises without the consent of the enterprises and the persons. The people on the who are interested for this data cannot, for example, get or retrieve the data. So that is why I was just wondering if there are some standards or there are efforts to somehow to cross that the two worlds of open and closed data.
Yeah, but that would not be so much about a specification, if I understand you right, but really on which data or which parts of the data to make publicly accessible and which data to keep somewhat more restricted. There indeed we have another pilot ongoing that is called the Linked Data Showcase, where we are trying to explore this a little bit. So I would suggest, if you want to know more about that, just send me an email afterwards and we might invite you to the web meetings of that pilot so that you could see what we are doing there. Trying with a small group of people really to explore how to more fine-grained identify access rights to certain parts of data. That is early stage, so there is nothing yet for publication, but eventually we'll get to that point also. At the same time, also Franziska has posted the link to the GDPR study and how they are, how the ISA core vocabularies are related to GDPR. She's posted the link to that study on in the chat box. So feel free to grab it from JoinUp.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Danny speaking here. I would like to submit one of my questions to the audience, which relates to what is useful as supporting documents, guidance for people, organizations that want to implement GeoDCAT-AP or related. So as I explained, we are working on best practice document, but there might be also other solutions to have more detailed examples or a real user guide to walk you through how to implement GeoDCAT-AP. But the question is that something people are looking for that would be useful? So that's one part of my question. So what type of support would be required to make the step towards GeoDCAT-AP implementations? And secondly, of course, I understood that part of the public in this webinar has done some GeoDCAT-AP implementations. There were several ones, if I'm not wrong. So if some of you are interested to describe in more detail what you have done in your implementation as a best practice, then of course you can contact me or the organizers of the webinar, because we are still open to describe some of those, because that would help others to do their implementations. So that would be the question towards the participants here.
Any comments from the audience? Unmute yourself if you want to speak, or else just type in the chat box.
Antonio is speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Now, one thing to Danny. Is it possible to add the Italian implementation to the list of the best practice in the OGC document?
Yeah, I think so. If I heard your story, it fits quite well, and it describes, we have kind of a schema to follow to describe it, but I think the case that you described, it's not so big problem to do that. So yes, that would be very welcomed. I have the Italian case already in mind, so we might have contacts after the webinar on that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Or any answers to the question from Danny? What would help you with the implementation? Where could the owners of the specification do better by publishing guidelines, by publishing a real handbook? Maybe from my own experience there at this point with our own vocabularies, the core vocabularies, we found it quite useful to publish some documentation on how to use them, and we have this handbook that is also published on JoinUp, and people find it quite interesting to give them a first start on how to use the vocabularies. But even there, I do believe that we could do better. And another observation that I would like to add is that with the implementation, it helps a lot when people see the maturity of the specification and see that it is actively being maintained, which is why also with all the DCAT-AP flavors, we are now going to enter into a more regular maintenance and release cycle. If you have any issues that you would like the owners of the specification to know about, you can post them on GitHub, and they will all be taken care of. And this does help a lot with the implementation. There are no further questions or comments from the audience. Another question that Andrea wanted to ask to the audience. Andrea, would you like to speak yourself or just?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. I was thinking I was speaking and I didn't realize that. No problem. It was my fault. No, I was just thinking that. Okay, maybe, I mean, this is not probably the right moment for asking feedback to the participants, but maybe worth also mentioning that if there is any question or if you want to report any issue or any implementation, actually, there is a working space for GeoDCAT-AP on GitHub. I'll put the link in the chat. Wait a minute, everyone. So this is the working space. So you can use this one to submit questions. You can submit what you have done or requests for revisions and so on. Because in case that there will be a revision of GeoDCAT-AP, it's important to know possibly which are the issues for using it. But it's also interesting, I think, to have feedback from the implementations, like the one reported by Antonio and Geraldine. If these national profiles of GeoDCAT-AP added new things or revised any part of GeoDCAT-AP, this is a good input for a possible revision of GeoDCAT-AP, and also, I mean, it's in order to facilitate adoption and to address the actual requirements for who plans to use it.
Yes, indeed, I would like to emphasize this point again, also from my own experience when asking people, okay, why are you not using the specifications? I hear quite often, yeah, because they don't exactly fit, they are lacking this, and there I found it's not really so good, but they never give us any formal feedback, so we learn about these issues very often only casually because we have a coffee with somebody or we meet somebody at a conference. So the systematic way to report issues would be on the GitHub, see the link in the chat box, and these issues that you mentioned there will definitely be addressed. It could, of course, be that the working group then decides to not make the change you want, but generally, if it's a reasonable request, they will take it into account, and that's the way to go. So please feel encouraged to really mention any issues that you encounter.
Hello, here is Natalia from Publication Office. I have a question related to documentation. It was covered now partly, but just to reconfirm. So, for example, the plugin solution described by Flandern portal and so on, that all can be found in the same place on GitHub, or that at different places where we would need to look for information? Basically, I want to say that it would be helpful to have one maybe space where we collect all most relevant and updated information on how to implement map with XSLT scripts and plugins and so on.
Indeed, very good point. So one topic is where the actual solutions are published, and usually that might indeed be GitHub or JoinUp. The other is where you can read about the solutions, and there, of course, we would encourage the use of JoinUp. But for these specific plugins, I'm not sure, so I pass the question back to the speakers, starting with Geraldine, maybe.
Yes, the plugin is now only posted on the GitHub pages of metadata and the GeoNetwork community, but I can, of course, submit it on the GitHub working space of GeoDCAT-AP and maybe at the JoinUp pages as well, so it is mentioned everywhere where it can be mentioned. That is certainly not a problem.
Thank you very much. That would be actually quite good. Andrea posted also some more links in the chat box about reported GeoDCAT-AP implementations, but maybe speak for yourself, Andrea.
Yeah, but these are actually the reported implementations that date back to the days when GeoDCAT-AP was developed. So we're basically members of the working group that was saying that I'm doing this. So one of the things that actually, as Natalia is missing, is sharing experiences across the organization. You have been using it. So the more feedback is collected, the better. Also for people that are who are planning to use GeoDCAT-AP. And an option can be, of course, to use the GitHub space of GeoDCAT-AP to report this, and it also provides a space for discussion and for sharing experiences. So it would be useful to use it for that purpose as well.
Yeah, then we have another link posted in the chat box by Danny on the OGC discussion paper that you mentioned. Would you want to comment on that link, Danny? Oops.
Not directly, it's just the link to have the paper. And similarly, if there would be a best practice document describing the examples, that will be also posted on the OGC website. And of course, we can also provide the link on the GitHub document in the same place on JoinUp or the ISA website. That's also possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think really the four of us should link afterwards to really also cross-publish all the information that whether people go to join or go to GitHub or go to Flanders or go to OGC, that they find all the information that is around there. Okay. I think with that, we have almost reached the end of our webinar. So thank you very much to all the speakers. I think there is quite a lot going on around DCAT-AP. It is quite a lively specification, and there are more and more implementations. So I would, in that context, also encourage the audience, again, if you have or know about any other implementations that are not already in the Join-Up platform in the list just mentioned, we would be happy to publish it. So please let us know so that we could have a more up-to-date version of that list. And with that, I would close. One very important thing, of course, to mention. Remember that this webinar was organized in the context of the SEMIC action of the ISA program, which is about more things than just GeoDCAT-AP. We have also published the general DCAT-AP and the ISA core vocabularies, and we are doing a lot of activities around semantic interoperability, as Pavlina already explained in the beginning. And of course, we organize the annual SEMIC Conference, which this year is going to be in Helsinki on the 21st of October. Registration has just opened, so we welcome you to register and attend the conference, and hopefully see you in Helsinki. Then one more thing. Here you have some links for more information, but we also have a satisfaction survey. Just a second. Okay, sorry, I had to cross-check for a moment because I couldn't see it at first sight. So here on the left, under Share Your Views, you have the link to our satisfaction survey. So best would be to do it right after the webinar, to follow this link and to fill in our satisfaction survey. Yeah, it's coming up, but yeah, I need to share this. Just a second.
The link can also be found in the chat, so that you can copy paste it.
There you see it. Okay, first you see the privacy statement, and then once you accept that, you are going to see the terms of service. And then you are hopefully seeing the actual survey. Oh no, this is the probably because I'm connected as an administrator, so I now see the pages where I can create the surveys. So I invite you to just follow the link that's in the slides and fill in the survey yourself. Sorry for that. It's now also in the chat box, so you can also follow the link from there.